Hello, bookish friends. I'm Allie, and today I'm going to do the Pokemon Book Tag. I originally saw this on Reagan's page, Peruse Project, and I don't think the original is still up. I did try to locate it, and it went to a video that has been privated, so if you want to see someone else do this particular one, definitely check out Reagan. But now I'm going to start. I'm going to go through each type of Pokemon, and each one has a prompt with it, and I'm going to choose a book for each one. Well, I've already chosen a book for each one, so now to get started. The first one is Normal, which is a contemporary, and I chose The Little Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. This book is really sweet. It's about a woman who basically lets go of her old life and starts over in a new little town, and she has a dream of starting a bookshop. So it's about her story and what she does. It is really, really sweet story. The next type is Fire type, which is romance. And for romance, I chose Dash and Lily's Book of Dares. This is by Rachel Kahn and David Leviathan. And I usually read this around Christmas time because this is a really sweet romance, Christmassy book. It is a young adult book, and it is set in New York City. It goes back and forth between perspectives of Dash and Lily, and it starts with Dash. He finds a notebook in a bookstore that prompts him to do some challenges, and it's just a really sweet, Christmassy, New York theme romance story. The next type is a water type, and that is an easy or flowy narrative. For this one, I chose The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I always forget that name. This story is a really sweet story about a little girl whose family dies. She's left to a family member who she doesn't actually know, and so she gets sent to this huge house off in the moors, and she at first hates it, and she's just this like terribly mean little child, and it's about her growing and learning and finding who she is while exploring the gardens on the estate. It's just a really sweet, easygoing story. It's very easy to read. I really recommend this book. The next is Electric Type, and that is a book that left you buzzing. And for this one, I don't have the book anymore. I loaned it out to a friend and I haven't gotten it back yet, but it is The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. It is a science fiction book full of short stories that will definitely leave you thinking. It's one of those that just sticks with you, and you can't get it out of your head. You just keep thinking about it because it's just, the stories are just so crazy, and I don't even know how to explain it, honestly. It's just a really good book. You should definitely check it out. The next book the next category is Grass, and that is a favorite first book to a series. And that for me would be Scott Pilgrim #1, Scott's Precious Little Life. Basically, this is the movie in one book. It follows like verbatim what they scripted in the movie. So if you like Scott Pilgrim, this is where you start. I love all the graphic novels, but this one is definitely my favorite out of all of them. Okay, for the next category, it is Ice, and that is Characters Cold as Ice. I chose The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This story starts out with a little boy, and his family, in his mind, is completely normal, average life, and his life gets turned upside down one day when, I don't want to tell you what happens, but an occurrence happens, and he meets a little girl, and everything changes, and then everybody in his life starts being really hateful and mean to him, and he's lost in this cycle of feeling just completely on the outside of his own life. It is such a good book. It is so hard to describe because Neil Gaiman creates this fantasy story that is just, it takes you to another level. This is a really fantastic book, but it does leave you feeling just the isolation the poor boy felt through the whole story. It's good. The next is Fighting Type, and that is an action-packed story. One of my favorite action-packed stories is The Princess Bride by William Goldman. This book doesn't stop. It doesn't slow down. Once it starts, it just keeps going. It's full of humor. It's full of bad guys. It's full of good guys. It's full of sword fights and pirates and just like you can't go wrong reading this book. This book is incredible and you should definitely read it. The next category is ground, and that is down-to-earth characters. I chose Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This book is about a little orphan girl who gets adopted into a family, and this family is actually wanting to adopt a little boy to help out on their farmland, but they end up with Anne, and it is a story about how she is like assimilated into this family and she changes their lives because they weren't expecting to get a girl, but they fall in love with her, and it's just a really sweet, down-to-earth, heartwarming story. Next category is flying type, and this is your favorite high fantasy story. I have to go classic with this and say The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, because The Hobbit is basically the foundation of fantasy as we know it today. Everything that Tolkien wrote was just set up for the fantasy that we have nowadays, and honestly, this is just one of my absolute favorite books of all time. The Hobbit is just a masterpiece. I mean, what can you say other than that? Alright, the next category is a bug type, and it is a book that annoys you or bugs you and you don't really know why. For this I chose Let It Snow. It is by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Miracle. I first read this back in high school and I actually really enjoyed it, but when I reread it during Christmas, it bugged me. It really frustrated me, and I don't exactly know why it did because I used to love this book, but it really bothered me this time. And I'm holding on to it because it was a book that I used to love, and I like to read it around Christmas because it's a cute Christmas story, but like, I don't know. Okay. The next category is rock, and that is a book that is difficult to describe. I chose American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and honestly, I can't describe this book to you because I don't know how. I can tell you the main character's name is Shadow, and he gets out of prison at the very beginning of the book, and after that, it's really difficult to explain. I mean, honestly, this book will take you on a crazy adventure about gods in the form of humans, and it is just really, really good. I do recommend this book highly. It is a very thick book, but this is the special edition book that has all the extra content in it, so if you see this cover, then this book is going to be bigger than the actual release of it. The next type is ghost type, and that is no characters safe or anyone could die. I chose The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This book, at first I wasn't a fan of the writing style, but after I got into it and got all the way to the end of it, I was blown away. She does everything intentionally in this story, and you see like the slow descent of the characters into madness, and just like, it blew my mind. And this book is really intense. Like, you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know who is safe and who is not safe. You just don't know anything. And once you like get into it, you don't want to put it down because it's just crazy. It's really good. Read it around Halloween though, because it's definitely a spooky read. I mean, read it anytime really, but Halloween is good too. Okay, the next type is dragon type, and that's going to be a book that's got magical creatures or beings in it, and I chose The Adventure Zone. This is Here There Be Gerblins. This is the very first graphic novel that they released. The Adventure Zone is actually a podcast. It's a group of brothers, the McElroys, playing D&D, and it is one of my favorite podcasts of all time. If you like D&D and just crazy, funny situations, then go check out the podcast. But also, this is the first arc of their podcast. Well, it's the first storyline of their podcast in a graphic novel form, and these characters are hilarious. They go on hilarious adventures, and like the art style, drop my bookmark. The art style in this is just incredible. I love the art in this. So definitely check this out if you've never heard of the McElroys or the Adventure Zone, I think that you would enjoy it. The next type is dark type, and it is a dark or twisted plot. I chose Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This book is one of my favorite classics. It is very dark. It follows a man who knows that he's changing, and he's both good and bad, and he knows that he's got both of these inside him, and it follows him as he's just battling against this, trying to get back to a normal life, and it's very intense. Not really intense. It's just difficult to explain, really. This book is very dark. It even seems like in the story it just like takes place at night more. I don't know. I think that this book is very well done. And the very last one is a fairy type, and it is a fairy story recommendation. I haven't actually read a lot of fairy based stories, but the Spiderwick Chronicles they do have fairies in them, and this is book 1, the field guide. I have all of them, but this book follows these 3 children that move into this house, and the house holds secrets, and they start to see the magical world. So this book is really good, and it does contain fairies, and it's not like centered around fairies, but it does have magical beings in it and such. So I recommend these books. They're very quick reads. As you can see, this is really short, and they are just really fast paced. Once you get into it, it's like, oh my gosh, what happens next? And then you read them all really quickly because they're so good. Okay, that concludes my Pokemon book tag. I hope that you have enjoyed seeing the books that I choose for each type. If you decide to do this book tag, definitely let me know down in the comments below, because I would love to watch it. Let me know some of your favorite types of Pokemon too. And check out my awesome Gotta Catch 'em All shirt. See you guys next time.